In the forests of the American Pacific Northwest, there's a very specific fight happening between two animals, and it's been running for millions of years. On one side, the rough-skinned newt, an animal so toxic that a single one carries enough tetradotocin to kill several adult humans, estimates suggest. On the other, the common garter snake, one of the only predators on Earth that eats these newts and survives. Biologists Edmund Brody Jr. and his son Edmund Brody III have spent decades documenting this exact standoff, and what they found changed how scientists understand venom resistance entirely. In some populations, garter snakes can eat a newt containing enough toxin to kill dozens of mice and simply move a little slower for an hour, then go on with their day. So here's the question this video is actually about. Not just this snake, but a pattern that shows up again and again across the animal kingdom. Why don't venomous or poisonous animals kill themselves with their own weapons? Comment lock or armor below. Guess which one you think it is before I tell you. Most people assume the answer is some kind of full-body immunity, like these animals are wrapped in armor that poison simply can't get through. That's not what's happening, and it's worth being precise here because the real mechanism is much stranger and much more specific. Poison and venom don't damage your body through some vague general toxicity. They work by binding to receptors. Think of receptors as molecular switches on your cells, built to receive one specific signal. Tetradotocin, the toxin in that newt, targets sodium channels, the switches that let your nerves fire electrical signals. Block enough of them, and the signal that tells your heart to keep beating simply stops arriving. The garter snake's resistance doesn't come from armor, it comes from a change to the switch itself. Over generations, mutations altered the shape of the snake's own sodium channels, just enough that the toxin can no longer fit into them properly. The receptor still works completely fine for its normal job. It's a precision edit to one specific lock, not a shield, not a blanket immunity, a changed lock, resistant to one very specific key. That's the core mechanism, and once you understand it, the rest of the animal kingdom starts making a lot more sense, because this exact trick, editing the lock, not building a shield, shows up independently over and over in completely unrelated species. Take the king cobra. Its venom targets acetylcholine receptors, the switches your muscles use to receive movement signals from your brain. In most animals, cobra venom jams that switch shut and the muscles stop responding. That's how the paralysis happens. But in cobras themselves, and in some of their prey, like the mongoose, that receptor has a slightly different shape. The venom molecule can't latch onto it. Same switch, different notch, wrong key. Poison dart frogs run the same playbook with a completely different toxin. They carry batrachotoxin, among the most lethal compounds found in nature. A dose smaller than a grain of rice can be fatal to a person. It works by forcing sodium channels to stay locked open, causing uncontrolled nerve firing until the heart gives out. But researchers studying the frog's own sodium channels found several altered amino acids, the building blocks that give the channel its shape, enough to stop the trachotoxin from binding in the first place. In some frog lineages, that resistance appears to have evolved through just a handful of changes. In others, scientists have found it takes several compensating mutations working together to get the same result without breaking the channel's normal function. It's not always a simple flip of a switch. Sometimes it's a small renovation. Pufferfish tell an even stranger version of this story. They carry tetrodotoxin too, the same toxin as the newt. But here's the twist. Pufferfish don't even produce it themselves. It comes from bacteria living in their gut. The fish evolved resistance to a poison it didn't invent, then simply repurposed that borrowed resistance as a defense system of its own. And this resistance isn't universal or guaranteed even within one species, which brings us back to the snake and the newt and why their story is really the center of all this. In regions where Brody's team studied both animals side by side, they found the toxicity of local newts and the resistance of local snakes track each other almost exactly, population by population. Where newts are deadlier, snakes are more resistant. Where snakes get better at resisting, the newts, over generations, become even more toxic in response. Neither side wins for long. Every generation, the contest resets slightly further along a scale that keeps climbing on both sides. It's evolution documented in close to real time in one specific stretch of forest. Here's a question worth pausing on. If evolution can build a lock this precise, why isn't every dangerous animal's resistance perfect? The honest answer is that evolution doesn't optimize for perfection. It optimizes for good enough to survive and reproduce. A cobra doesn't need total immunity to its own venom. It just needs enough resistance that an accidental exposure doesn't reliably kill it before it passes on its genes. That's a much lower bar than immune, which is exactly why some of these systems are imperfect. Honeybees, for example, have partial resistance to their own melittin-based venom, enough to usually be fine, not enough to guarantee it in every case. There's a practical payoff to all this research, too. Because these toxins work through such specific mechanisms, scientists studying resistant animals' altered receptors have used that structural information to help design antivenoms, and in some cases, new pain management drugs. Molecules that block a receptor precisely without disrupting the rest of the body's chemistry. That's exactly the kind of tool medicine has spent decades chasing. The same edit evolution made to protect a snake from itself is now indirectly helping protect us too. So, which animal's version of this surprised you the most? The snake and the newt, still locked in an active arms race, or the pufferfish defending itself with a weapon it never even built? Let me know in the comments. Next time you see a garter snake in the grass, remember what you're actually looking at. Not a predator that happens to be lucky, the current winning side of a fight that's been running one mutation at a time for millions of years, with no final winner in sight.